हेलो फ्रेंड्स, केजी क्लासेस में आपका स्वागत है। आज हम आपको पोइट्री के डेफिनेशन बताएंगे अलग अलग राइटरों के बारे में। फर्स्ट, अल्फ्रेड लॉर्ड टेनिसन 1809 to 1892। लॉर्ड टेनिसन वाज unquestionably the greatest poet of the Victorian England. For nearly half a century, Tennyson was not only a man and a poet, he was a voice of a whole people, expressing in exquisite melody their doubts and their faith, their grief and their triumphs. In the wonderful variety of his verse, he suggests all the qualities of England's greatest poet: the dreaminess of Spenser, the majesty of Milton, the natural simplicity of Wordsworth, the fantasy of Black and Coleridge, the melody of Keats and Shelley, the narrative vigor of Scott and Byron, says W. J. Long. All these striking qualities are evident in the successive pages of Tennyson's poetry. Tennyson reflects in his best poetry the restless spirit of the progressive Victorian age. As a poet, he expresses not so much a personal as a national spirit, so he is the most representative poet of the Victorian era. Tennyson is the most complete embodiment of the Victorian spirit of compromise. To him, love is a domestic sentiment. As regards sex problems, the main object of Victorian was to discover some middle course between the unbridled licentiousness of previous ages and the complete negation of the function and purpose of nature. The dominant element in Tennyson's thought is his sense of love. The thing which most impresses him is the spectacle of order in the universe. Tennyson's nature poetry is original and bears the impact of contemporary science. It is seen in the minuteness and exactness of his observation. Hudson remarks of previous ages and the complete negation of the function and purpose of nature. The dominant element in Tennyson's thought is his sense of love. The thing which most impresses him is the spectacle of order in the universe. Tennyson's nature poetry is original and bears the impact of contemporary science. It is seen in the minuteness and exactness of his observation. Hudson remarks, but Wordsworth had seen nature with the eye of the poet only, while Tennyson saw it with the eye of his scientist as well. Tennyson's landscape painting shows that he was endowed with the exactitude of the botanist and the delicate sensibility of the artist. Tennyson never paints nature as something outside of man with life, spirit, purpose of its own. Nature for him is always a background for reflecting some human emotion. Tennyson's nature poetry is intellectual. His world of nature is the world of imaginative scientific man who has an eye for beauty and a heart to feel it. Tennyson is a great and gifted poetic craftsman. Tennyson is essentially the artist, no other in his age. Writes W. J. Long studied the art of poetry so constantly or with such singleness of purpose, and only Swinburne rival him in melody and the perfect finish of his verse. Second, Robert Browning 1812 to 1889. Browning's message is to triumph of the individual will over all obstacle. The self is not subordinate but supreme. Browning is a poet of hope which lies in the imperfection of man. His optimism was a result of experience. His faith was founded on joyful experience, not in the sense that he selected the joyful experience and ignored the painful ones, but in the sense that his joyful experiences selected themselves and stood out in his memory by virtue of their extraordinary intensity of color. Browning's firm faith in the existence of God, who is all-pervading being and all-powerful, is the main source of his optimism. Browning was capable of sympathy with asceticism when directed to higher ends, but for asceticism as an end in itself he had nothing but dislike. Browning is, according to Ricketts, preeminently a poet of world. As an artist, he seems most convincing and most alive when he is the spectator of earthly life and earthly difficulties. The chief characteristics of Browning's poetry is his firm conviction that life is worth living. He rolled back the morbid pessimism, the sickly disdain of active life, which had infected so much of English literature during the 19th century. Browning is an ardent singer of the glory of love. The love he writes of is love between man and women. The object of love in his poem is not an imagined goddess but a real woman. The natural end of such love is marriage. Browning, like Donne, is the poet of wedded love. There is sharp intellectual quality in his love poetry. From the deep, tormented, sensual strain in Donne's poetry, Browning's characteristic art form is dramatic monologue in which he takes some striking individual, generally at a critical moment, and instead of dissecting him from the outside, penetrates to the depth of his nature and through his own utterness compel him to reveal the innermost secrets of his life. Browning is an original poet. Recognition was slow in coming, but like Wordsworth, he lived to see his name established high among his fellows. He was astonishingly great but also astonishingly faulty, and his faults have come in the way of the appreciation of his real greatness. Browning has many poems, says Hugh Bowker, in which beauty of style is conjoined with profundity of thoughts, and in these poems lie the hope of the permanence of his fame. Matthew Arnold, 1822 to 1883. Arnold is regarded as the greatest elegiac poet of England. It is not that he has written more elegies of the highest quality than others, but that the elegiac note runs through all his poetry. Arnold's elegiac spirit is like that of Gray rather than that of Milton or Shelley or Tennyson. His elegies have never the triumphant and inspiring ring of Milton's or Shelley's. Arnold's lamentation and melancholy are always characterized by classical self-control and decorum. Arnold is never hopeless. Man can come out triumphant out of chaos and gloom if he strives to know his soul. So energetic, so enthusiastic, and so active a soul was his father that the poet cannot think of him as dead in Rugby Chapel. Arnold's poetry is an interpretation of the main movement of mind in the England of his time. Of all modern poets, says H. Paul, except Goethe, he was the best critic of all modern critics. With the same exception, he was the best poet. Arnold saw the whole of contemporary life, steadily the rapid industrialization in Victorian England led to the growth and development of materialism, which resulted in loss of spiritual and human values, and the terrible contrast of wealth and poverty. To him, the city of London was a symbol of industrial and material expansion, of lawlessness and sordidness. Arnold was a born classicist, a lover of sapliness, restraint, clarity, and lucidity. He disliked eccentricity, arbitrariness, and self-will, which romanticism encourages. It is also negligent of unity and attaches great importance to beautiful passage. The purpose patch as regard his poetical method. Arnold is essentially classical, not romantic. Love of nature is present as an essence in all his work. Arnold is a passionate lover of the countryside. Wordsworth enshrined the Lake District in his poetry. Arnold chiseled the Oxford countryside into immortality in his poems. Arnold was a great and gifted poetic artist who took great pains in polishing and perfecting the rhythm of his poems. Disraeli once congratulated Arnold on being the only living Englishman who had become a classical in his own lifetime. Next, A. H. Clough, 1819 to 1861. Clough was an intimate friend of Arnold, whose thesis is a novel monody on Clough's death. Clough's poetry is the truest expression in verse of the moral and intellectual tendencies, the doubt and struggle towards settled conviction of the period in which he lived. It resembles Arnold's poetry in its skeptical quality, its transparent sincerity, and its moral earnestness and courage. Next, James Thomson, 1832-34, 1834 to 1882. Thomas Thomson, The City of Dreadful Night, strikes a note of unrevealed pessimism, largely subjective in the word of Hugh Walker. His pessimism was founded on the conviction that there was no hope for humanity and any more than for himself, and that the appearance of progress was a mere illusion. The gloom and depression that envisage the poem are due largely to the many disappointment he had suffered, intensified by his constitutional interpretations. Next, Edward Fitzgerald, 1809 to 1888. Fitzgerald is remembered for his translation of the Persian work, The Raviyat of Omar Khayyam. The translation has the force and beauty of an original work. Like Tennyson's In Memoriam, the Rubaiyat is also a criticism of life, less explicit, less polemical in its form, but nonetheless definite in its outlook. Tennyson's poem stand midway between Fitzgerald, Rubaiyat, and Browning's Easter Day, blending the two characteristics of the day, a wistful hesitancy and a religious optimism, in a way that proved by its very compromise extremely welcome and soothing to many minds. Thanks, best of luck.